Alrighty, folks, we're live again. Another session of weather discussion and Q&A here on Puget Sound Stormwatch. Alright, do we have anyone in chat yet? Anybody out there yet? We're glad to see that we're only 7 subs away from 1100. Not expecting that a couple nights ago. Alright, anyone just tuning in? How are you doing tonight? Julie Olson says hello. Hello and welcome back. Decided I wanted to do a short little Q&A and weather discussion tonight ahead of this impending system. Luckily, the center of this will stay well offshore, moving towards the northeast up into the Haida-Gwaii region. So the strongest winds with this will miss us. We could have a brief easterly gap wind event for some of the foothill spots early tomorrow morning. That right now is my primary concern for those foothill spots that just got their weather back. Or, wow, that was a blunder. They just got their power back after the weather. Pardon me on that. I made a couple of posts on Facebook announcing the possibility, and sure enough, it exploded like wildfire, so I thought might as well jump on the session and see if anyone finds me over here and decides they want to ask about it. But the setup is pretty simple for these east winds for a short while tomorrow. You got lower pressure off the coast here and higher pressure farther inland. The difference between these pressure gradients, this high over the inland northwest and the low off the coast, is going to draw a vacuum of air through the mountain gaps from east to west. By the time things kick up, the higher pressure will be a little bit farther southeast, and this area of deepening low pressure will be moving off towards the northeast to our west. Sarah, we're getting another storm. Kind of, sort of, but not exactly. Nowhere near what we saw the other night. That was truly an anomaly that, depending on how things go, we may not see again this year. Liesel Mortara, any idea how Halloween is shaping up? Wet and windy. If you have any kiddos out there trick-or-treating this year, make sure they have raincoats on. They're most likely going to need it. Because this isn't the actual atmospheric river itself, but what's forming behind it that will move in on Halloween will drag atmospheric river potential into our region. This is going to be fairly too progressive and not move close enough to our area to drag a plume of moisture with it. Any moisture that does move across the Pacific with this next upcoming system tomorrow will be fairly progressive and won't bring much rain to the area. But Friday into Saturday is a different story. It'll be a bit windy Halloween night. We're not looking at anything destructive, but we do anticipate some wetting rain for the area, and depending on how long this atmospheric river stalls over us, could bring a significant amount of rain and mountain snow to the higher elevations too. We'll go over that as well. But first, I want to show you guys the most recent model run here from the NAM 3KM. The 0Z is fresh off the press, just getting some new data on it. These are 10-meter gusts. You notice this red area pop up tomorrow morning. This is at 7 a.m. These are wind gusts of 45 to 50 miles per hour between North Bend and the pass. Looks like wind direction is going to be out of the southeast because the storm system, when it peaks at its lowest pressure, is going to be off to our northwest. It's going to draw the gradient from southeast to northwest across this area. And some wind also possible up at the Stevens Gap, but not as intense. Does kick up a little bit close to Stevens Pass, up into the 40 to 45 mile per hour range as we go on into the morning. You notice too, it's really going to pick up out of the southeast over the Salish Sea as we go into the afternoon hours as well. The front is still off the coast at this point. Some 60 mile per hour gusts possible on the northern edge of the Olympics. However, it looks like the Sequim and Port Angeles area will miss out from the southeasterly winds due to the Olympics protecting them, but not necessarily behind the front. This is when the front passes through around 8 p.m. You notice the wind direction is going to switch and is going to shove these east winds back out over the Cascades. A little breezy in our area, around 30 to 35 miles per hour depending on where you're looking, according to this one model run. But it's been showing this progressively over the last 24 hours. So really good model agreement from the NAM on how this event could play out. Nothing significant. Again, it's on the lower end of things, but the new model run is suggesting 55 mile per hour winds possible off the coast of Oak Harbor near Whidbey Island. These would be out of the southeast before that front comes through and shifts the wind direction. In reality, if it wasn't for that front moving through, we'd probably see a longer duration east wind event. So we're thankful for that front to shift the wind direction back to out of the west, else we'd be probably getting sustained southeasterly winds and gusts as that system lingers offshore. Just looking at some Facebook comments as well, too. All right, everyone, welcome in. Thank you for joining on short notice. Just opening up this time for a Q&A weather session. I announced the possibility of some of these easterly or southeasterly winds affecting parts of the area. It looks like the Snoqualmie, North Bend, and River Bend area will get the strongest of these. Then we're forecasting some stronger southeasterly winds up here in the Salish Sea as well, just north of Sequim, over the open water. This NAM model here is showing 50 to 55 mile per hour wind gusts out of the southeast tomorrow afternoon before that front comes in to change the wind direction. It'll get breezy around the Puget Sound around 11 p.m. to midnight tomorrow night. So can't count out the possibility of any localized power outages with this. But our most recent windstorm definitely helped prune some more of those vulnerable trees out of the area too. And not expecting as much rain right before this too, so the ground won't be as saturated as Saturday was, since we had a full-blown atmospheric river the day before a windstorm. That's a disaster in the making. Probably a silly question, but I'm very new to tracking wind direction and strength since we bought a house out in the rural areas. You find the NAM or the Euro to be more accurate when it comes to the South Puget Sound area. That's a comment from Facebook, and actually the NAM did a pretty good job showing the stronger winds down here along the strait. I want to see if I can go back in time to the model run of interest that showed some of those stronger wind gusts. I've got to go back farther in time than that. See, this is the model I'm talking about. This is right around the area where we recorded those 66 mile per hour wind gusts. It had a pretty good signal on that. It shows 60 miles per hour over the strait, so I think the NAM takes the cake for this round. It, however, oversaturated the Willapa wind shadow over this area. And some of these areas did not get wind gusts higher than what we saw in the Puget Sound area. So it's kind of hit or miss depending on which model you want to look at. But the Euro overall did a pretty good job as well. I just think the NAM sort of nailed the Narrows wind forecast a little better than the European. Well, definitely much less of an audience tonight. Then again, there's not a major windstorm bearing down on us, so completely understandable. It's also Monday night, getting up towards 7:30. Does anyone have any additional questions they'd like to ask during this open time right now? Just replying to some of your Facebook comments if you're coming from Facebook. How about Buckley, Bonnie Lake area? What do you classify as a mountain gap? Also from Facebook, the mountain gaps are the little openings between the peaks here in the passes and the Cascade Mountains. So there's a pretty notable gap called the Stampede Gap down here, just south of Snoqualmie Pass, where we get some of our strongest east wind events downstream. Bill Barclay, hello, Puget Sound Stormwatch. Hello, Bill, welcome to the stream. Just going over the possibility of some strong east winds coming down the mountain passes tomorrow morning. This would be the forecast at 8 a.m. and so far several model runs of this NAM 3KM have picked up on this. Just show you how consistent it's been. This was all the way at 0Z yesterday, 24 hours out, and then this was 18Z on Sunday. A little bit less there in the 12Z. This is where we start having some minor disagreement on strength. But it was, see, it wasn't showing it that far. Then again, it doesn't go out to that far at that range. So we have to go within 24 hours realistically. Let's see, it was showing it back 48 hours ago. It was showing the possibility of this east wind event that's upcoming. Max wind gusts have been bouncing around a little bit, and so has the timing. Looks like the strongest peak wind gust will be sometime around 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, just downstream of Snoqualmie Pass, outside of North Bend and Snoqualmie. It has max wind gusts around 48 miles per hour in this most recent run, along I-90, just outside of the Riverbend area. Due to the southeasterly orientation from southeast to northwest, a lot of the communities to the west of the mountain gaps that usually get wind gusts may miss out entirely on this round. Let me show you guys again the background behind this. We have higher pressure off to the east over the inland northwest. It's developing low pressure system in its baroclinic leaf phase right now, moving off towards the northeast. This will miss us, but the cold front associated with it, which is still developing, will move into the area and kick up the breeze a little bit. This will switch the offshore flow back to onshore flow tomorrow night and early Wednesday morning. So luckily that cold front comes through, or else we could possibly see a longer duration east wind event. But the pressure difference between this high pressure inland and the low pressure offshore is what's going to draw that vacuum effect through the mountain gaps. Alright, already up to 6 likes. Thank you guys. 30 views on the day so far. Yeah, guys, we more than doubled our audience a couple nights ago. It started out at 527 subs before the stream started, and we ended somewhere around 1.07k. Plus an additional 20 or so subs after the stream ended in the last 2 days. So thank you guys so much for subscribing to Puget Sound Stormwatch. And let me go ahead and show you guys this on windy as well. Hey, there's a developing low pressure system that's moving off towards the northeast. Let's go switch this to wind gusts. This tells the better story overall. So this is the setup right now. Higher pressure off to our east, lower pressure to our west. And this storm system is going to deepen a bit and move off towards the northeast, but stay well to our northwest. So the threat of damaging winds around the sound is low to none, thankfully. And this is tomorrow morning around 6 a.m. It's at 969 millibars. And notice it's starting to pull this vacuum through the mountain gaps, oriented more so to the northwest from the southeast. And this thing continues to move off to the northeast, making landfall somewhere around Haida, Kauai. But at peak winds around the area, this is what the setup looks like. Higher pressure over Yellowstone, lower pressure off to our northwest a bit, and this is going to pull the southeast and northwest pressure gradient across the mountains. So we zoom in a bit, and this is what the European is showing. Showing wind gusts around 40 miles per hour around the mountain gaps, mainly the Stampede Gap. A little bit less up at Stevens, according to this model as well, but it does show some of these winds extending down towards Highway 18 and possibly points west, including the Hobart area. But it looks like the strongest winds are predicted to be around the Chester Morse Lake area, along I-90 between Snoqualmie Pass and Riverbend. That's the overall synoptic setup of this potential event. Yeah, this deep low, not too far offshore, and this strong high to our southeast, as well create this vacuum effect through the mountains. You notice it pulls offshore flow off the coast and also through the Strait of Georgia and Juan de Fuca, too. So an unusual easterly wind event possible as far north as the Salish Sea, too. Got a lot of comments coming in on Facebook, trying to answer them in a timely manner. Also heard reports of thunder over Bremerton earlier. We definitely wasn't expecting that, but sure enough, on radar scope, it showed a lightning strike over the Manchester Port Orchard area. Even though the air has been stabilizing, it was just unstable enough for a little pop-up thunderstorm to form in the Bremerton area. That has since dissipated to almost sheer nothingness. I was really surprised to see that, but that's proof that there are things that I can miss on the weather apps. It definitely caught me for a loop when I saw that, when I got a report of thunder in Bremerton. This tells you can't catch them all. Alright, looks like we got 12 of you guys in here now. Thank you for liking the stream. Go ahead and share if you like the coverage so far. Matt Craig says, good evening. Hello, my friend. Good evening. Welcome back. Is currently going over the setup for a potential short-lived east wind event tomorrow morning across parts of the eastern King County foothills, possibly some of the Snohomish County foothills too. But over time, as this cyclone starts to move off to the northeast, we'll start to draw some of the winds through the Salish Sea down the straits as well, and that's what the European's showing right here. Matt Craig, how's your voice? It has definitely started to recover. I feel like I'm close to 100% strength on the voice again. It'll probably be a busy night, Halloween night. So I'm thinking about streaming sometime around then. Probably not Halloween night, and definitely not the night after, because the night after is my birthday, November 1st. So I'm going to spend that time with my family, take a break from the weather for a little bit. But possible live stream in store on Thursday, perhaps, before the main event. Because I'll also go over the atmospheric river setup while I'm on here, too. The Europeans showing some rather strong gusts for the Salish Sea, just southeast of Victoria, BC. This would be at 4 p.m. And see, the front is just offshore at this time, so you can start to draw some of these stronger easterly winds up across Whidbey Island and the San Juan Islands. Matt Craig, nice. Liesl Mortara, think we'll have any lowland snow this winter? Well, now that we're officially in a weak La Nina, the chance certainly is in our favor for lowland snow. You know, we all remember December of 2021 when some areas got nearly a foot of snow over a 5 to 6 day period. That was a La Nina year. We just had the ingredients line up perfectly going into the end of the year, all the way into New Year's Eve even. It's probably too soon to start talking snow around here. It just depends on if we can get any of these modified Arctic fronts down from Canada. You know, the stronger this Fraser River outflow is during the winter time, then the better our chances will be. We just need a nice trough to come in from the north, kick on that offshore flow through the Fraser River, and bring a fair amount of moisture to our area. That's what happened with our first frost this year. If you guys remember, a lot of us had below freezing temperatures for a matter of one day. Literally one day, we had a low pressure system come in and kick on these northeasterly winds through the Fraser River, and it cooled us off pretty good. A lot of areas hit below freezing. I think that was earlier this month, if I'm not mistaken. How bad is it going to get in Graham? It doesn't look like Graham's going to be getting any of these easterly winds, but it could get pretty breezy after the front passes tomorrow night. Notice how the winds kick up quite a bit out of the southeast here. Luckily, the mountains are going to shield Sequim and Port Angeles from the strongest of these southeasterly winds because they're looking quite damaging over the water. Some of these could make it up in the Friday Harbor and Lopez Island too, and possibly parts of Whidbey, so we'll have to keep our eyes peeled on that. But the front is just offshore at 8 p.m. And then this is when it starts to cross, and you'll notice the winds turn back onshore behind this front too. Yeah, 2021 was a crazy year in weather for this area, for sure. This would be at 2 a.m. and it does show some weaker level wind gusts around this area. We're going to switch it to the NAM to show you what the NAM is saying. This is the continental US, so it doesn't show anything farther north or west than central Vancouver Island. But this is what the windy model is saying. This is the NAM 5 km on windy. Although reality is it's the 3 km. It has some winds picking up here in the foothills as early as 1 a.m. tomorrow morning. That is 5 hours away. Some of these possibly funneling down toward the Puget Sound, but nowhere near as strong as the foothills. As some of these areas getting up to 35 miles per hour up here in the foothills pretty early on in the morning, and it's already drawing offshore flow through the Strait of Juan de Fuca. I see it has it picking up pretty sharply in the next couple hours as we go through 4 a.m. Over Chester Morse, it has wind gusts already at 42 miles per hour. You notice too, it's going to draw some wind through the Fraser River as well. So some parts of Ferndale up through Blaine could get wind gusts out of the northeast at 35 miles per hour as this thing is passing through. We go out to 8 a.m. and this is when it shows the possibility for close to 50 mile per hour gusts along parts of I-90 east of Riverbend, going up towards the pass. Even shows some strong gusts here downstream of the Stevens Gap as well, getting down to areas of US 2. However, due to the southeast-northwest orientation and not the due east to west orientation like we're normally accustomed to, some areas that typically get these strong east winds like Monroe, Sultan, and Gold Bar may actually miss out on this, because that lower pressure is off to our northwest and not off to our west like back in November of last year when we had that bomb cyclone offshore. And I bet you guys all know how that turned out for most of the foothills. You know, devastation in some parts, and some areas are still cleaning up from that. It even has some areas down near Mount Rainier getting some of the action too. It has the Eatonville area getting up to around 35 miles per hour tomorrow at 8 a.m. out of the southeast. But the area of greatest emphasis is probably right around the Stampede Gap. You know, just south of Snoqualmie Pass here, draws winds in through Stampede Pass and then down through the foothills. During stronger events like the bomb cyclone, we got 60 mile per hour gusts down here in Milton, of all places. Very far west from those mountain gaps. And strong winds continuing through the area through the 10 a.m. hour. This is when things really start to pick up over the Salish Sea. And sustaining themselves up at the Stevens Gap too. You notice how it's starting to funnel these winds from the mountain gaps all the way through the Salish Sea. So I wouldn't be surprised to get some isolated wind gusts here up to 30 miles per hour in the Everett area. I was never afraid of wind until that bomb cyclone. That's the power of nature. Never underestimate it. And through 2 p.m., things starting to die down a little bit over the mountain passes. Peak winds have already occurred around this time for North Bend, Snoqualmie, and River Bend of all places. Some of these winds possibly stretching down into Black Diamond, Hobart, and Maple Valley as well. This is when the strongest winds will likely be occurring off the open waters. 47 miles per hour at 3 p.m. over the open waters according to the NAM model here. And notice that huge wind shadow protecting most of Sequim and all of Port Angeles too. Then this is the front right here offshore. 5 p.m. 6 p.m. clear as day frontal boundary. This will slam the winds back onshore and immediately cut off the east winds as soon as it moves over the area. Even showing some stronger gusts over the Willapa Hills and Capitol Peak too, out of the south. As winds will start to shift more southerly after this front moves onshore. By 9 p.m., it's already changed the wind direction over the open waters too. ETG Vortex, welcome back. What's Olympia looking like for our weather? Does have some stronger winds in the Olympia area. Maybe getting close to 40 miles per hour out of the south as this front's coming through at 9 p.m. tomorrow. It keeps those winds going through at least 11 p.m. But notice how most of our winds are back to onshore by midnight. And the front has already passed the central Puget Sound. Getting pretty breezy here in the South Sound. Up to the 30 mile per hour range, but we're not expecting anything nearly as close to what we got the other night. Then during this time, winds start to die down behind the front and we go back to normalcy going into Wednesday morning. At least before the next system is anticipated on Friday. Let's go run through that one more time for anyone who may have missed it. Easterly gap winds picking up around 1 a.m., but not peaking till later on in the morning. Olympia will be too far away to get these gap winds, thankfully. You notice how Olympia's sheltered here. But by 4 p.m. when that front starts to move ashore, it's going to kick up the winds quite a bit here down south. So you down here in Thurston County, areas hard hit by that cyclone just 2 nights ago. Kicking up again here from the south, just nowhere near as strong for most areas. But the NAM model here does have 40-mile-per-hour winds for the higher elevations over Capitol Peak, as well as some foothill spots along the Nisqually here, or just south of the Nisqually, getting close to 40 miles per hour down there at around 9 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Then these strong winds coming out of the southeast ahead of this cold front passage. And then it immediately slams the door on those easterly winds coming through the Puget Sound. Could get a brief period of 35 to 40 mile per hour gusts down here over the South Puget Sound around midnight. But luckily, only for a short time. And then after that, like it never even happened. I'd say be thankful for that front, or else we'd have a longer duration easterly wind event for these foothill spots. Because thanks to that front, it shifts the wind back onshore around the area. Else we'd still be dealing with this vacuum effect with this low hundreds of miles offshore. At the same time, it also experiences rapid weakening as it moves to landfall too. A couple things going in our favor here around the Sound. But let me go over this setup one more time too for anyone who may have missed it. Let's go around peak winds around 10 a.m. or so for most of the area. A deep mid-latitude cyclone hundreds of miles offshore, still close enough to affect our weather here, and then strong high pressure over the inland northwest and Yellowstone region. So we'll draw a vacuum effect through the mountain gaps. So from southeast to northwest across the area, because wind always moves from higher pressure to lower pressure. With the low pressure relatively close offshore, but not close enough to give us damaging winds around this area. And high pressure this close to our area at this intensity near the surface is what's going to be doing it for our region. Heard this winter will be cold and dry. It's actually right now the indications for this winter are colder and wetter as far as I know. Let me go and check the temperature outlook. See if I can go to a verifiable source. Yeah, so this is from the National Weather Service. As official as you can get. Shows a variable polar jet almost directly over our area, which could allow some of these colder weather systems to dip into our area, but overall a wetter pattern expected due to the weak La Nina already in effect for our area. So for December, January, and February, we're expecting below normal temperatures and above normal precipitation for the Pacific Northwest. Still seeing some drought conditions around the area. However, drought drastically improves, and a lot of the area along the coast and Olympics are expecting a removal from drought conditions this winter. Thank you to the National Weather Service office in Aberdeen, South Dakota for this presentation. Oh darn. This is a good setup for snow down here in the lowlands though. For you snow lovers, especially down here in the immediate Seattle area, this is a pretty favorable setup for some snow. Just based on historical analogs. You know, 2021 being a good year for that. Yeah, it shows about 33 to 40% below normal temperatures expected this winter. And around 33 to 40% greater than average precipitation expected for the entirety of the Pacific Northwest. So overall, chances are looking good for snow down here in the lowlands later on in the winter. Just need this jet stream to sag a little farther south to allow some of these colder and wetter weather systems in. Because something like this, notice the blocking high pressure here, favors higher pressure, which means not as favorable for snow. Drier, but colder. Yes, but we need the combination of weather and colder, so we need some of these troughs to come down and bring some modified Arctic fronts across our area this winter. That will be the best chance for snow this winter. We can get that modified Arctic front in and the trough. Just perfect timing from one another. We can get a similar event to what we got in 2021. Just no freezing rain. That stuff sucks. Yeah, timing's gonna be crucial for freezing rain. You know, we need it so that all of the cold air near the surface is scoured out before the transition phase back to rain. That's when the freezing rain can get us. You know, a famous example of this is January of 2012. Remember that huge ice storm around the January 19th timeframe for this area? As one of those transition periods between snow and warmer rain for the area. Especially if you're tucked in those river valleys that don't have as much wind scouring to really clear out the cold air. Allows the rain or the you know, bear with me here. The super cooled raindrops that drop through that parcel of cooler, drier air don't have a chance to warm up all the way, so they immediately freeze on the surface that's below freezing, while the air just a couple thousand feet up can be above freezing, but not enough to warm up the raindrop enough so that it's not super cool. Yes, Matt Craig, 2012 was a brutal year for ice. I remember we had a lower end event in December of 2022 as well. You know, nowhere near as many power outages or as much damage reported for that also. But yeah, the two most recent events for freezing rain I can think of are 2012 and 2022. Probably going to make one more update on Facebook here tonight. Also looks like the Washington Weather Chasers page is just less than 2,000 away from hitting 100K followers on Facebook. So huge shout out goes to Ben and the team with Washington Weather Chasers. And they hit a huge milestone here for Washington weather pages. But Puget Sound Stormwatch, the community is growing quickly. We're approaching 30,000 followers here very soon. Current follower count is 28,392. So 29,000 is favorable by this weekend's storm system. A really cool birthday present by Saturday would be to hit 30,000 though, but I feel like that's out of the realm of possibility right now. It's entirely possible, but we need one huge push. We are 1,608 followers away from 30K on Facebook. Matt Craig says, have a great night. Thanks for all your info. You make it to where I understand this stuff. Thank you, Matt, for tuning into the stream. Have a good night. And you take care. Hoping for nothing too damaging out of the southeast tomorrow morning. But the NAM and Euro models are showing the possibility for some strong southeasterly winds through these mountain gaps, which are mainly just fancy ways for saying passes. But the most memorable pass for this area is the Stampede Gap. Like the Stampede Pass, where that rail line goes over just south of Snoqualmie Pass. It's a really nice mountain gap that allows these east winds to impact this area. Of course, most famously, that bomb cyclone last year, where the Enumclaw area got over 60 mile per hour wind gusts downstream from that mountain gap. Another big event, too, was Veterans Day 2014. I remember that wind event quite vividly because we lost power for most of the night and the following day. Actually, all of the following day was without power after Veterans Day 2014. It wasn't until early in the morning on the 13th of November that we got power back for the Milton area. Of course, a really strong gradient casted through the Stampede Gap during that event. Already closing in on 11 years since that east wind event around the area, but a lot of damage reported with that one. Of course, in recent memory, we still have the bomb cyclone around last Thanksgiving or so, which really impacted people in the North Sound as well. We got a strong pressure gradient through the Stevens Gap up here that really impacted areas downstream as far west as Everett, and some areas along the water got these strong winds too. A max wind gust for Milton during the bomb cyclone was 57 miles per hour, way out here. These easterly winds normally don't reach that far west, but they did that time around. Alright, looks like we just crossed 100 views. 17 likes on the stream. Thank you all so much for continuing to like and share. Don't expect to be live for long. Just wanted to portray the possibility of this east wind event. You can also go over some model synopses as well. So he's showing it here on Pivotal Weather too, the NAM 3KM. Same story here. Some of these strong wind gusts could extend as far to the northwest from the mountain gaps as Everett, and even as far north as Mount Vernon, some of these areas too. Then as the front comes through and kicks the winds back to out of the west, some breezy to blustery winds expected across the Puget Sound area. Even has the Olympia area getting close to 40 miles per hour as this front passes through tomorrow night around 9 p.m. Puget Sound area is expecting anywhere between 30 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts out of the west between 11 p.m. and midnight tomorrow. So nothing compared to what we just got, but certainly up there, and it won't be dead calm. So it is something to talk about. That windstorm a couple days ago did prune a lot of the vulnerable trees. So to some extent, that did help our case for this next little system passing through. So some of these other models are starting to render too. I believe the 18Z Euro goes out to Halloween, so we can start to see some of the details of this next incoming system around the area. Yeah, this is the European between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. Good agreement with the NAM over the Salish Sea on strong winds over the open waters. Possibly getting as high as 55 miles per hour over some areas of San Juan Island and just offshore of Oak Harbor on Whidbey Island. Even has the Bellingham area getting up to 40 miles per hour. Then after that, all eyes shift to the next incoming system, Halloween night. Although not looking as windy here on the European for Halloween. It looks much windier the next morning of. Could be an eventful birthday around my area, November 1st. The big 2-6 coming up. So wind gusts 30 plus across much of the Puget Sound the morning of November 1st from 5 to 11 a.m. Nothing huge, but with the atmospheric river hitting the area around the same time, the soil could be loosened quite a bit, just enough for some of those trees to be uprooted pretty easily. And thankfully, the wind event we just had did help prune a lot of leaves off the trees, but we do still have trees with those leaves on them. So expecting some locally elevated impacts, but nowhere near as much as we just had on Saturday night. Still going to be a few days before the NAM gets out to this range, though. Probably not till Thursday morning or Thursday night. So have to hold off a bit on high-res imagery. We'll just have to go with what the European's saying here. And this is in 6-hour intervals, so we're not quite to the hourly interval yet. Let's zoom out a bit to the... Let's go to the regional level, look at the northwest sector. Show you guys a potential setup. This is a cold front associated with another decaying mid-latitude cyclone moving through the area. Let's look at precipitable water anomalies, and this shows you this is an atmospheric river. This could even be considered a Pineapple Express because it does dip down towards the Hawaii area. So due to its southwest to northeast orientation and not west to east like a normal atmospheric river, this could be considered a Pineapple Express for our area. Jackie Swanson, thanks for the updates. Thank you for tuning in, Jackie. So some models have showed this atmospheric river hanging up over the area for a little while, but the Europeans showing it a little more progressive than previous runs, which would certainly reduce the flooding risk around this area. This is in 3-hour intervals, and it has the coast directly under center of this atmospheric river, just in time for trick-or-treating. And then it starts to slide through the area early in the morning on the 1st, and according to this run of the European, has it moving out the same day. Let's look at some 6-hour precipitation totals with this. So the bullseye Halloween Eve is going to be central Vancouver Island along the coast. Then we start to get some of these heavier showers and rain over the area as we go into the morning time on November 1st. Here for the Olympics, some of the coastal spots, over 1.25 inches possible for some of these areas over a 6-hour period. This is going to be the peak of the atmospheric river and potential Pineapple Express. And between 5 and 11 a.m. on the 1st, lighter totals expected here in the Puget Sound, but some areas up in the higher elevations expecting over 1 inch of precipitation. Could be in the form of snow over the mountains as well. This is a heads up for anyone that may be traveling. And then it shows the possibility for some conversion zone showers here in Snohomish County too. But yeah, the European is much more progressive in this run on the 18Z. The 12Z, though, did have it hanging up a little bit longer over the area, getting some of these higher precip totals down here. So it had on the last model run, between 5 p.m. and 11 p.m. Halloween night. Around 3/4 of an inch for some areas of the South and Central Sound, and well over 1 inch, some areas up to 2 inches possible during peak Halloween trick-or-treating time along the coast. Overall, the same pattern exists. Same potential solution. A wet and windy Halloween Eve for much of Western Washington expected. So clear as day atmospheric river signal. Halloween Eve into November 1st. Hawaiian Islands are down here, so it's like borderline a Pineapple Express. Strong cyclone up here is going to start to pull in the moisture along the cold front boundary here. So that associated cold front and atmospheric river are going to sag south over our area, starting over Vancouver Island and then gradually moving south. Looking fairly progressive right now on model runs, so not looking super impactful. This looks like another run-of-the-mill atmospheric river event, unfortunately timed during Halloween Eve. So this is our cold front coming in tomorrow. Quick little plume of moisture extending across the central Pacific, but not necessarily considered an atmospheric river. It's way too short-lived and nowhere near enough moisture needed to be considered an atmospheric river or Pineapple Express. But that Halloween Eve and November 1st event is 100% an atmospheric river. It extends just north of Hawaii, so some could consider this a Pineapple Express, but it looks like it's on the fence of a Pineapple Express and a traditional atmospheric river event. But fairly progressive on the European. See, the moisture extends all the way out to Russia, Japan, and the Koreas, all the way across the North Central Pacific here. That is a textbook atmospheric river signal right there. And for anyone interested with the hurricane down here as well, Hurricane Melissa, watch what happens in the next couple of days. Starts to rapidly move north as it catches the polar jet stream, and it's dragged all the way out towards Bermuda. It's a really close approach to Bermuda, which is right where the cursor is right here. It could get a lot of those outer bands, but then it gets thrown up into the northern Atlantic, where it will gradually dissipate over time. But yeah, that hurricane over there is separate from the upper level jet stream. See, it's separate, and then it starts to catch that jet stream, and then gets thrown up north by the polar jet. This is looking at 300 millibar heights, so 30,000 feet. Currently just on the north end of this jet stream. So this is the current little ridge over our area right now. It's a small little transient ridge, so quick and short-lived. And then here's the next developing storm system that will bring that cold front through tomorrow. You're right under the jet stream again. Quick little hitting borderline atmospheric river, just outside of atmospheric river criteria. And then the next stronger system, Halloween, throws the jet stream directly over the Pacific Northwest. We are under the fire hose right there. It shows us directly under the jet stream for a couple of days. It could bring us several weather systems over the next week. Look at some 500 millibar height anomalies, 18,000 feet. The current little transient ridge overhead, and then that cyclone clips us. Brings the front through, another little transient ridge for a couple of days, and then the next cyclone brings that front through, and there's our atmospheric river signal right there, between the trough and the ridge. Thank you guys all again for tuning in on such short notice. And if you don't already have the notifications enabled, go ahead and ring that bell to be notified of live streams like this in the future, the moment I go live. This channel has shifted more from a briefing channel to a live stream channel. That's where I get most of my viewership from, is from the live streams. So may see a few briefings here from time to time, but I've kind of shifted away from the briefing format and gone more towards a stream format, which suits a lot of people savvy from what I've heard. Now looking at the GFS, the American model. This one shows some things of interest further down the stretch too, such as bringing a couple of weather systems directly into our area, and it even shows a strong ridge forming now think this is my first time looking at this imagery today. This is the 18Z GFS showing a monster ridge over us, which would bring nice, cool, but dry weather to our area. All the way out at November 12th. So take this with a grain of salt. This is pure fantasy forecast here. Let's go start from the very beginning. So there's our weather system that's clipping us, sending a front towards our area tomorrow. That moves off into Haida, Kauai. And then the next Halloween system, sending a front in atmospheric river with us. The center of low pressure moves all the way off into the northern Gulf of Alaska, though. But this front extends for over 1,000 miles south of this low pressure system. And notice the moisture return all the way across the northern Pacific. That's our Halloween atmospheric river coming through. And then some ridging forming over the area, and then the potential for some weather systems to form across the area over the next couple of weeks as well. And it does show several areas where we could have atmospheric river potential through the first week of November, going into the second week of November even as well. So the GFS in particular looks quite active over the next 2 weeks. A curiosity, let's see what the Canadian model has to show. Looks like the Canadian model actually shows 2 fronts hitting us in 24 hours. Ooh, that could be something of interest. This just in. This is what the Canadian model is showing. It's showing another mid-latitude cyclone impacting our area sometime around November 4th. Now, these deterministic models have showed some interesting solutions for November 4th, and I've started posting about this on Patreon and on the Facebook subpage as well. But it seems like the other deterministics have backed off a little bit on the solution, but the Canadian sticks to its guns. Most recent 12Z shows a relatively deep mid-latitude cyclone off the coast, luckily weakening as it approaches. It brings another pretty favorable pressure gradient to our area, which could bring windstorm potential. This is according to the Canadian deterministic model, showing 40 to 45 mile per hour gusts, some even higher the farther north you go, for parts of the Puget Sound area, if this one were to verify. But this is just one model, one solution, so to be taken with a grain of salt right now. Still 8 days out as well. Let's see, this was the GFS, the last run, the 12Z. Luckily, it's backed off on the 18Z. See, it's a completely different solution here, but it did show areas of 60 mile per hour winds for the Seattle area, if this one were to verify, the night of November 4th. A completely different solution now than that. And why was this? Because it brought this deep 985 millibar low right into a favorable area, which cast a huge pressure gradient over the central Puget Sound, similar to what we just saw the other night. And then a front right behind it less than 24 hours later. But not to be taken seriously yet, because we just had a flip-flop of models less than 8 days out. Anything really over 4 days is complete fantasy, especially for this region of the United States. So nothing too serious expected with this. The 18Z has absolutely nothing for this period. It brings a much weaker system down into Oregon around the same time, a day later perhaps. A complete flip-flop on the models for that. Will be something to keep tabs on as we go through the last week of October. Going into the first week of November, it's something we'll have to pay attention to. Because if it trends up towards another windstorm for the area on November 4th, then we'll have to sound the alarm on that. But right now, nothing to panic about. There's one model, one solution. There's something we'll just have to keep tabs on, though. Let's look at what the AI forecast system has to say. The AI forecast system brings the system north of Vancouver Island, effectively sparing us of any strong winds. It does bring a front through a couple of days later, though, that could kick up the winds, but nothing serious expected. And then another atmospheric river potential all the way out to Veterans Day. Go check out the HER for the area. Looks like the HER 3KM wasn't so convinced on wind speeds for our area with the easterly wind event. See, it has most of the wind staying confined to the foothills and the mountain passes. Doesn't have it extending as far out here. Does impact some areas of Snoqualmie and North Bend, but nowhere near the coverage that the NAM and European were showing. Still shows these strong winds for the Salish Sea, though, ahead of that front. And a little bit breezy here in the South Sound, getting up close to 40 miles per hour from the west overnight. But once again, nothing to be super concerned about. Not seeing anything over 40 for the Tacoma area as this front passes through. That windstorm we just had did a great number, taking out a lot of those vulnerable trees. So we don't really have to worry too much about tree damage, at least right now with initial indications. Looks like we just hit 150 views and 20 likes. Not doing too bad so far for a slower stream. Alright, for anyone still watching, have you gotten your power back? Looking at the PSC map recently, I just checked it out not too long ago. It looks like we're down under 10,000, I think was the number. But most of the big outages have been repaired already down in Thurston, Pierce, and King counties. So really great job by the power companies with their timely approach. Got to a point where they had to bring out the helicopters for a lot of the damage too, which you don't see too often around here, at least to my knowledge. But yes, huge salute to the linemen doing all of the work out there. But for sure, the number one thing on my radar right now is the east winds tomorrow. So some of these east winds getting up there along I-90, just east of Riverbend. Some of these stronger winds, 40 plus, could reach down to communities like Hobart, Snoqualmie, and North Bend. And some wind gusts 30 plus extending all the way down into Sammamish and Issaquah, possibly. As we go on later in the day, even has some of these winds making it out towards Paynefield and Everett. So I'll be watching the stations as the day goes along. See what some of the max wind gusts are for some of these observation stations at the local airports. As it brings this gradient directly over Paynefield tomorrow afternoon for a short while. Once again, Nam and Her are showing stronger winds over the Salish Sea. Euro as well. This could be the area where we get the strongest winds out of the southeast tomorrow. It's just west of Whidbey Island and just south of the San Juans. Alright, anyone, do we have any last minute questions or concerns before we start wrapping things up? Luckily, I didn't plan on going live too long. I knew it's a work night, it's pretty late. Didn't give out any notice for this, so wasn't expecting too much of an audience, but still had a pretty good turnout for tonight. It's good to see. I think we're still 7 subs. We may be a couple less now, but let me refresh the counter here. Okay, got 2 more subs. So we're now 5 subs away from 1.1k. 1100 here on YouTube. The thing, just a couple nights ago, I wasn't anticipating to hit 600, let alone 1,000. That was a huge step in the right direction for us. So thank you to everyone who subbed to the channel for live stream coverage. Should also mention too that after deductions, we made a total of $120 in donations thanks to the coffees you all bought. So thank you so much everyone who donated coffees 2 nights ago. We went up to 61 coffees from 21 different supporters. And here's the current top 3 leaderboard with Diana Stevens leading the way, followed by Lady Blue at silver and Jen at bronze. Everyone had some really nice words to say, so thank you all for your generous support. Without you guys, live streams like this would not be possible, so my gratitude goes to all of you. But just to conclude things for the night, another look at the potential setup that we're looking at tomorrow morning. High pressure off to the southeast, low pressure off to the northwest, pulls a vacuum through the Cascade Mountain gaps, and that is what could kick up some of those southeast and northwest winds tomorrow morning for most of our foothill communities, stretching as far west as Issaquah possibly. At least for peak winds over 40 miles per hour. So some additional damage expected up in the foothills the closer you are to the passes, just as a heads up right now. European model shows wind gusts in the 40 mile per hour range for some of the foothills downstream of the Stampede gaps. See, right around 40 miles per hour. Let me zoom in to show you guys again as well. These shows peak winds being over the Chester Morse Lake area. Possibly getting down into Hobart in some communities along Highway 18 like Maple Valley. See, the Euro shows around 40 miles per hour here at 11 a.m. tomorrow, with winds kicking up as soon as the sun rises, if not before that. Put that into comparison to what the NAM high-res model is showing. NAM shows stronger winds directly over I-90 starting earlier in the morning as well. We go out here to 5 a.m. It already shows wind gusts up to 43 here for the Riverbend area. As we go on throughout the morning, so we have winds being pulled through the Fraser River Gap here. Some winds being pulled through the Stevens Gap, Stampede Gap, and some of the gaps down here in the southern Cascades as well. But all offshore flow coming through the Strait of Juan de Fuca and off the coast. As we go on through the morning, wind gusts are expected to pick up quite a bit here in the King County foothills and the Snohomish County foothills, extending all the way out to Granite Falls and other communities too. But due to the more southeasterly oriented winds, we're not expecting winds out of due east, so a lot of these communities like Enumclaw, Buckley, and Black Diamond may miss out on this round. It's mainly oriented towards the northwest. And similar story up here over the Salish Sea. Due to wind shadowing, communities like Sequim and Port Angeles could miss out on the southeasterly winds tomorrow afternoon. It has things picking up quite a bit over 50 miles per hour here over the open waters, extending all the way up into the San Juan Islands possibly too. And then as the front comes through, it switches all the winds back to onshore and breezy conditions expected ahead of this front. Even has Olympia getting up near 40 mile per hour winds tomorrow afternoon. Then after the front passes, winds come to a calm and we get some nice relaxing weather for a few days with the transient ridge overhead. So enjoy that nice weather while we have it, because not going to be long before the next system comes in this weekend and brings a damp and breezy Halloween Eve to most of the region. Jasmine, Enumclaw, it looks like your area will miss out on the strongest of winds tomorrow morning. Could likely get breezy, but not expecting anything too terrible down there in Enumclaw. Trying to get this fixed for you. There you go. Since the winds aren't coming out of due east or down towards the southwest, mainly towards the northwest, due to the placement of the low pressure offshore, it doesn't look like the strongest winds will impact Enumclaw. Mainly Hobart northward. So some communities like Hobart, Riverbend, North Bend, Snoqualmie, and Preston, and parts of Issaquah and Sammamish also could get some of these breezy winds tomorrow morning. Here on the NAM model at around 10 a.m. here on the I-90 in the Riverbend area near Rattlesnake Lake, showing around 45 miles per hour out of the southeast. Perfect, thank you, says Jasmine. Thank you for your inquiry, and take care. Have a great night. So yeah, the closer you are to the water, the less your winds are going to be out of the southeast, unless you're up here over the Salish Sea. That's the overall synopsis of the winds tomorrow morning. Definitely expecting things to get breezy to blustery up here in the foothills. But some areas along I-5 down here could possibly get in some of the breezy action too. But most of this is going to be southerly winds going between the I-5 corridor between the Willapa Hills and the foothills of the South Cascades ahead of this cold front coming onshore. So not really seeing a big threat of east winds down south. It's mainly downstream of the Snoqualmie and Stampede Pass area. But the secondary threat up here along the Stevens Gap. But no major impacts are expected, which is great news. Yeah, some areas directly west of the mountain gaps could miss out on this event. So areas like Monroe, Sultan, Snohomish may not get any wind from this. George, welcome back. I think it's going to be a long, cold winter. There's snow on top of Wheeler Mountain in my backyard in Oso. A lot of that is thanks to the convergence zone last night, dragging down those snow levels temporarily. They actually shut down eastbound I-90 over the pass last night due to heavy snowfall with that convergence zone. Convergence zones do a good job at pulling the snow level down temporarily, especially the stronger ones, as we saw last night. Yeah, most of the area from Seattle, most of the area from Issaquah, I'd say, out east over the pass, got a lot of rain last night, and most of this east of Snoqualmie and North Bend fell in the form of snow or a rain-snow mix. So really impressive to see some of the totals over that area. But yeah, could be a long winter. I did talk about that earlier. Yeah, I pulled this graphic up from NWS Aberdeen, South Dakota, showing below average temperatures and above average precipitation possible through February. So certainly could be in for some snow here in the lowlands. You know, it's one thing I'll be watching here in the near future as we start getting closer to December. Alright guys, barring any additional last minute questions, we're going to go ahead and wrap things up for the night. Wasn't expecting the stream too long. Right on par with the time I was expecting tonight. Said I was surprised. I bet you were. Because some of the foothills reported some snow accumulation last night also. You know, we just had the conditions line up just right with that convergence zone and some of the cold air aloft still present behind that cyclone that came through. This worked out in favor for some areas. But I'll be watching the wind sites in this area closely as the sun rises tomorrow morning. I gotta get some shut-eye if I want to cover this event. And may even go live early tomorrow morning too. We will see how I feel when I wake up. Expecting some strong winds down here from Snoqualmie up to Riverbend as you go into the pass. And some strong winds possible through the Stevens Gap as well. We'll be watching that closely. From southeast to northwest. See through these little terrain features here. Of course, the most famous one is the Stampede Gap shown here with the Green River. We've had some of our stronger east wind events such as the bomb cyclone last year and also the Veterans Day gap wind event of 2014, which had power out in my area for over 24 hours. Close to 36 hours without power 11 years ago. Already a little breezy there in Riverbend too, 16 miles per hour. And sure enough, wind is out of the east. All right, everyone. Jaw George says thumbs up. Perfect. Thank you all so much for tuning in to this sort of short notice live stream. Make sure to ring that bell next to notifications for live streams like this next time. Planning to go live probably Thursday afternoon sometime, ahead of that next atmospheric river system ahead of Halloween. Expecting breezy and wet Halloween conditions around most of western Washington with that atmospheric river coming in. So stay tuned. Be sure to ring that bell, everyone. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Just a few subs away from 1100 here on YouTube, which mind-blowing. Did not think we were going to get up to that point a couple nights ago. But thank you all so much again for everything. Anthony here with Puget Sound Stormwatch signing